During the divorce, my husband said, "Pay me back for 10 years of living in my apartment." I silently agreed. A week later, I sent him my own bill. When he opened it, he was speechless. The divorce between Olivia and Mark did not come as a sudden event. Their life together over the past decade had been a slow, steady fading of everything that once connected them. Mark, who held a confident position as a mid-level corporate manager, was obsessed with his career. In his mind, Olivia, who had devoted herself to managing the household, was nothing more than a supporting piece of his successful life. The climax of the divorce process came on the day of the final meeting about dividing their assets. Inside the strict, functional office of the divorce attorney, with no personal details or warmth, the air was filled with tense anticipation. Olivia's face remained unreadable. She was calm, composed, and absolutely still, which stood in sharp contrast to Mark, who showed obvious agitation. His gestures were abrupt, his gaze was restless. What irritated him most was the unshakable calm of his former wife. He took it as a personal insult, as a challenge to his authority and superiority. The attorney, following procedure, began explaining the legal aspects of the case. As for the residence, the apartment was purchased by Mr. Mark Henderson before the marriage, and under current state law, it remains his separate property. However, considering the length of the marriage and the fact that Mrs. Olivia Henderson has, throughout these years, Mark sharply interrupted the attorney. His voice was filled with impatience, and beneath it was a barely hidden arrogance. What considerations could there possibly be? He leaned back slightly, then turned toward Olivia. She lived in my apartment for 10 years, for free. She used every resource I provided without paying a single cent in compensation. He narrowed his eyes. You know what, Olivia? A bitter spark flashed in his gaze as he waited for her reaction. I demand reimbursement for rent for that entire period. At the average market rate, of course. Only after that will our mutual obligations be fully settled, and then we can consider our accounts closed. He allowed himself a triumphant, self-satisfied smirk, completely convinced that his words had hit their target. He believed he had struck her weakest point and left her with no possible answer. He expected to see weakness, perhaps tears, pleading, emotional protest, or at least confusion. Anything but the reaction that followed. Olivia did not show the slightest sign of emotional turmoil. Her expression remained completely unchanged, unreadable, almost like a mask. She slowly lifted her gaze and fixed it directly on Mark. Her answer came in a surprisingly even tone, without any emotional color, without a trace of threat or resentment. "All right, Mark, I'll make all the necessary calculations." The attorney cleared his throat, feeling both awkward and strangely unsettled by the surreal nature of the exchange. It was clearly outside the usual procedures of a divorce settlement. But Olivia was already rising from her chair. "Goodbye," she said. Her voice was steady, without even the warmth of farewell. Then she left the office, leaving Mark in a state of triumphant certainty, mixed with a faint but still unconscious unease. Over the following days, Olivia devoted herself to a task that required absolute precision, method, and complete emotional detachment. Her natural neatness and ability to work systematically revealed themselves fully, as if she had transformed into a flawless analytical instrument. Her actions contained no emotional component. They were cold, calculated, data-driven. Every step was carried out with mathematical accuracy, as if she were completing a complex engineering problem in which every value had its place and function. Her first step was contacting a local real estate agency in their Chicago suburb, where she obtained detailed information on the average market rental cost for a comparable apartment in their neighborhood over the past 10 years. The amount, as expected, was quite significant. But Olivia merely noted it calmly, without any visible reaction. Then she began working through online resources. Her computer became a tool for painstaking research. She started by studying the price lists of the city's leading professional cleaning services. Daily maintenance of a living space of roughly 750 square feet, she mentally recorded, entering the data into a spreadsheet. Deep cleaning at a set frequency, on average once a month. Seasonal window washing twice a year, in spring and fall. She analyzed hundreds of service offers, compared rates, and calculated average values applicable to each year of the 10-year period. Every item was carefully marked with a 10-year time horizon, multiplying the final value many times over. Next came the calculation of meal preparation. Olivia mentally reconstructed Mark's food preferences, his constant demands for high-quality home-cooked meals, and his dismissive attitude toward frozen meals, takeout, or restaurant food whenever he was at home. She studied the rates of prepared meal delivery services and catering companies specializing in home-style meals. Daily preparation of full breakfasts, lunches, and dinners. The groceries had been purchased with Mark's money, but the process of turning those groceries into meals, plating them, serving them, and cleaning up afterward was something else entirely. She evaluated not only the time spent but also the labor intensity and the complexity of the cooking itself, which often required considerable skill. The total amount grew steadily, but logically. Laundry and ironing services were also carefully included in the calculation. She found price lists from professional laundries and dry cleaners specializing in delicate fabrics and business attire. Full care cycle for men's clothing, including dry cleaning of business suits, washing and ironing numerous dress shirts. Weekly laundry. Bed linens changed and washed with strict regularity every 2 weeks. Household textiles, curtains, tablecloths, blankets, and decorative fabrics, handled monthly or quarterly. Olivia carefully entered every figure into a specially designed spreadsheet, which became more extensive and detailed with each hour. Every cell was filled with absolute accuracy, without a single omission or careless rounding. Childcare was the most complex, multifaceted, and perhaps the most emotionally significant part of her calculations. Although Olivia tried to distance herself as much as possible from personal feelings, their twin daughters, Lily and Ava, were now 8 years old, and raising them had covered an enormous period of time. Olivia mentally revisited the sleepless nights of infancy, childhood illnesses that required constant care, the process of teaching basic developmental skills, visits to doctors, active involvement in school life, supervising homework, and taking them to countless classes, activities, and after-school programs. She gathered comprehensive information about the cost of professional nannies, qualified childcare providers, tutors in various subjects, and child development specialists. A full cycle of supervision, education, and all-around child development from birth to age 8, every day, for many hours, far beyond a standard workday. These calculations predictably produced the highest numerical values, reflecting the true worth of maternal labor. At that moment, her hand trembled for a second, as she remembered moments that could never be replaced. But with an effort of will, she regained her composure. This was not an emotional impulse. It was a cold, objective, almost merciless assessment. She did not overlook the many other tasks that Mark had always treated as something automatic, as an inevitable part of his comfortable life, something that required neither thought nor gratitude. Organizing family celebrations, birthdays, anniversaries, Thanksgiving dinners, Christmas gatherings, with menus, decorations, and guests. Choosing and buying gifts for his many relatives and business contacts, which required both time and taste. Meticulous planning of family vacations, including searching for flights, booking hotels, building itineraries, paying utility bills and other household expenses on time, maintaining household financial records, caring for home furnishings, even small clothing repairs, sewing on buttons, mending hems, and of course, simply keeping his wardrobe in perfect order so that every morning he could effortlessly choose a clean, ironed shirt without spending even 1 minute of his precious time, which he believed was meant for important things. Every such service, every act of care and labor, found its place in her detailed spreadsheet. By the end of the week, a thick, impressive folder lay on Olivia's desk. It contained dozens of printed pages filled with detailed calculations, multiple comparative tables of service rates gathered from open sources, and numerous screenshots of company price lists confirming the stated costs. The final amount, printed in bold at the end of the document, was truly astronomical, almost unimaginable for an ordinary person. It exceeded many times over the amount of rent Mark had so arrogantly and contemptuously demanded. At the bottom of the document, in small but perfectly clear print, she added a short and powerful note. "I am prepared to withdraw my claims if you withdraw yours." Mark celebrated his housewarming with all the grandness that matched his sense of personal status. Beside him stood Erin, his young companion, gracefully wrapping one slender arm around his neck. She was the woman for whom he had decided to break his marriage with Olivia. Erin was striking, ambitious, and, as Mark was absolutely convinced, perfectly suited to his idea of a successful modern life. The apartment, located on one of the upper floors of a new luxury high-rise downtown, opened onto a panoramic view of the glittering lights of the nighttime city, creating the feeling of belonging to the elite. Its interior shone with chrome, minimalist lines, and the latest designer finishes. Mark felt as if he were on top of the world. At the height of the party, while expensive champagne flowed continuously, and the loud laughter of guests drowned out the carefully selected background music, the doorbell rang insistently. Who could possibly be showing up this late? Mark muttered with slight but audible annoyance, irritated by the interruption of his triumph. But Aaron, driven by natural curiosity and unwilling to miss any detail, had already moved toward the intercom. "Courier service," came a dry official voice through the speaker. Mark shrugged dismissively. Probably one of the guests forgot to bring a gift and decided to send it now. Nothing surprising. People are always bringing me gifts. The courier, a young man in uniform holding a thick, impressive folder, stood at the door. His appearance seemed strangely out of place against the polished brightness of the celebration. "Mr. Mark Henderson?" he asked, checking the information. "That's me," Mark replied with a condescending smile, accepting the folder. He was absolutely certain this was another sign of his superiority. Some late acknowledgement, perhaps. Maybe even a surrender from his former wife, who had finally decided to pay the amount he had demanded, or something along those lines. He anticipated her humiliation. "Please sign the delivery confirmation," the courier said, extending a form. Mark signed it, keeping the same smug, slightly arrogant smirk on his face. Aaron stood nearby, impatiently looking over his shoulder, perhaps expecting another dose of entertainment. "What is it, Mark? Some card from your ex? Or maybe a funny little message where she asks for forgiveness?" she asked lightly. With the theatrical gesture of a magician, he opened the folder. Inside were no bills. No apology. Only neatly stacked sheets of paper covered in small but perfectly clear print and filled with impartial numerical data. At the top of the first page was a heading written in a strict official style. "Counterclaim from Olivia Henderson to Mark Henderson for services rendered and work performed during the period from 2015 to 2025. Mark choked on the champagne he had just lifted to his lips. His smile instantly disappeared, replaced by an expression of complete confusion. "What the hell is this nonsense?" he muttered. His voice sounded weak. He began scanning the documents, first with bewilderment, then with a rising sense of alarm that quickly turned into genuine panic. Every category of domestic service that Olivia had quietly performed for 10 years was described and priced in detail. House cleaning, daily meal preparation, careful maintenance of all clothing, systematic household management. All of it was presented as professional paid services. The largest and most expensive section concerned the raising and all-around development of the children. Years of daily, hour-after-hour labor equivalent to the services of an entire staff of professionals: nanny, childcare provider, tutor, educator. Each service had been valued strictly according to average market rates, without discounts or concessions, tied to specific years and inflation. The final amount, printed in bold at the end of the document, was truly astronomical, almost unimaginable for an ordinary person, even for Mark with his level of income. It exceeded $300,000. Mark instantly turned pale. The blood drained from his face. His jaw fell open. His eyes darted feverishly across the lines, desperately searching for an error, a trick, some inaccuracy that could disprove what he considered the absurdity of the document. But the numbers were impeccably precise. The listed rates were completely realistic and supported by open-source data. It was a legally competent document, a claim that could realistically be filed in court. And Olivia's chances of winning appeared more than real. The amount was many times greater than what he had hoped to extract from Olivia for his imaginary rent claim. Aaron, who at first had been amused watching his bewildered expression, began reading the document over his shoulder with growing attention. Her gaze became increasingly serious. Her eyes widened with every new line, with every new item. She saw not simply a list of household duties, but a professionally structured legal claim that could turn into a genuine financial disaster for Mark, one capable of destroying the wealth he had so carefully built. Her expression changed. The charm she had seen in Mark began to evaporate instantly, replaced by the cold, calculating pragmatism that was natural to her. She no longer saw him as a successful, wealthy man, an object of envy and admiration. She saw a man facing a serious lawsuit and a colossal debt. What is this, Mark? Her voice sharpened. There was no trace of her earlier tenderness, only a clear note of accusation. He swallowed with difficulty, trying to force words out. It's some ridiculous joke, Aaron. She couldn't have done this. It's just revenge. A joke. A joke? Aaron gave a cold laugh. Her gaze became piercing. $300,000 for childcare and housework? You mean to tell me that all this time, when you supposedly had such a great income, you didn't hire help? Your ex-wife was acting as your personal housekeeper and nanny, and now she's billing you this insane amount because you were too cheap to hire staff? She snatched the folder from his hands. The movement was sharp and decisive. Her eyes landed on the final line, specially highlighted. I am prepared to withdraw my claims if you withdraw yours. So she's demanding that you drop your claim, or she'll take you to court for this huge amount. Aaron looked at him as if she were seeing him for the first time in her life, and what she saw clearly disgusted her. Do you understand what kind of embarrassment this would be? What kind of blow to your reputation? To your business? Mark tried to justify himself. His voice shook from fear and humiliation. Aaron, it's revenge, I told you. She can't prove this in court. It's all complete nonsense. She's bluffing. Nonsense? Aaron's patience snapped. Are you saying she did nothing for 10 years? That she didn't manage the home? Didn't cook for you? Didn't take care of the children while you built your successful career? Her voice rose. You just said yourself that she lived in your apartment and used your resources. Then who was maintaining that entire life? Who created all those comforts you treated as automatic? Who washed your clothes? Who ironed your shirts so you could look successful and presentable every day without lifting a finger? Her voice grew louder, sharper, more accusing. The guests, sensing the rising tension in the room, gradually fell silent and began listening. Their faces showed a mixture of curiosity and discomfort. You know what, Mark? I thought you were truly successful, wealthy, independent. But it turns out you're just an ordinary calculating liar who shamelessly exploited his wife's labor for 10 years, then still had the nerve to call her a freeloader and try to squeeze the last pennies out of her. She held up the folder. And now, instead of acting like a decent person, instead of ending things civilly or giving her what fairness requires, you tried to demand some imaginary rent from her, and you've landed yourself in a financial disaster that could ruin you. She slammed the folder shut. The sound was like a gunshot in the sudden silence. Her face twisted with anger, disappointment, and perhaps even disgust. Pack your things. Right now. I don't need this kind of successful man. I am not going to become an accessory to your problems, or drag you out of debts you created through your unbelievable greed, lack of principles, and absolutely unforgivable stupidity. Mark tried to object, but the words caught in his throat. He was choking on humiliation and panic. He looked at her hardened face, at the folder of documents now lying on the coffee table like a final, unappealable verdict. Suddenly, his carefully constructed world, his illusion of success and superiority, the image he had so carefully cultivated, began collapsing right before his eyes. Irina, Aaron, please, think about this. We can fix it, he stammered. His voice was barely audible. I already have. She pointed toward the door with a decisive gesture that allowed no argument. Get out. And don't forget to take your $300,000 bill with you. The guests, feeling completely unnecessary and embarrassed by the dramatic scene, began awkwardly saying goodbye and quickly leaving the apartment, trying not to meet Mark's eyes. Mark remained standing alone in the middle of his new apartment, which only minutes earlier had been full of life and laughter. Now it seemed enormous and lifeless, like a tomb. He was completely alone, with a folder that had cost him far more than he ever could have imagined. He called Olivia the next day, then the day after that, and again a week later. At first, he tried to speak firmly, threatening to file a counter lawsuit and referring to some vague imaginary rights. But his voice betrayed him. It trembled, revealing the growing panic breaking through the mask of confidence. Then he moved on to desperate pleading, vows, and promises. He begged, promising that he would immediately withdraw all his rent claims if she, in turn, withdrew hers. He swore that his previous actions had been a monstrous, unforgivable mistake, that he had been blind, foolish, and had failed to understand the true value of what he had. He said he missed her, and the children terribly, that his life without them was empty and meaningless. He offered to meet, to talk, to settle everything peacefully, to return to their old life, to give him one more chance. His calls became more frequent, and his voice grew more broken, more pleading. Olivia answered his calls for 1 week. Then another. She no longer felt sharp hatred toward him, nor anger, and certainly not love or regret. Only a quiet, calm satisfaction with what had happened, with the knowledge that justice, even in this form, had prevailed. Her life was gradually beginning to settle into a new shape, brighter and clearer than before. She found remote work that brought her not only stable income, but also intellectual satisfaction and a renewed sense of self-worth. The children were with her. Their laughter filled the home. And most importantly, she felt absolutely free. Free from other people's expectations. Free from the need to constantly prove her value. Free from the weight of an unhappy marriage. She breathed deeply. One evening, when the phone rang yet again, and Mark's persistent name appeared on the screen, Olivia took a deep breath. She answered. She listened to his uneven, almost hysterical voice, full of remorse, pleading, and undisguised panic. He talked about how deeply wrong he had been, how much he loved her and their daughters, how he had lost everything: status, money, respect, and only now understood that she had been the most valuable and meaningful part of his life, the foundation on which his entire world had stood. He begged for mercy, for a chance to make things right, for one more conversation, for the possibility of starting over, of bringing everything back to the way it had been. Olivia slowly exhaled. Her gaze was fixed on the window, where the lights of the night city shimmered, symbolizing her new free life. She did not say a single word in response to his emotional, broken stream of desperation. She simply, quietly, without any visible emotion or doubt, without the slightest hesitation, pressed the button to end the call. Short, disconnected beeps sounded on the line. Long, drawn out, no longer pleading, only breaking off into complete and absolute emptiness. The door to the past had closed forever and irreversibly, leaving behind only the echo of his despair.